Many of us take job security for granted until it's suddenly gone. Amy Davies knows that feeling all too well. She was laid off multiple times due to company reorganizations and downsizing. Through those setbacks, she learned how to navigate career shakeups, and now she helps others do the same.
Know that you could lose your job tomorrow. It's like living in a rental property. That house is not yours. Someone could come in at any time and say, hey, I'm putting this property on the market. You have to move. And it's the exact same thing with the job.
The lessons one entrepreneur learned through career reinvention, next on Reinvention at Any Age. How did you end up in this kind of situation? And that changed the whole trajectory of your life. This is my light, and I'm going to let it shine. Even if it's uncomfortable, if the change is for the better, it's worth it. Don't be scared. Prepare. Reinvention is possible. Go make it happen for you today. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Reinvention at Any Age. I'm Amy Sweezey, and I am passionate about helping you navigate through your reinvention. If you missed the previous episode with my guest, Amy Davies, you'll want to go back and listen either now or at the end of this podcast. In that episode, Amy shared her personal reinvention after what appeared to be a perfect life with a perfect family and a perfect job all fell apart in front of her eyes. She was the victim of abuse and stalking and lived in constant fear while trying to provide for her children. Now, in that last episode, Amy shared with me the steps she took to find safety, and she also explained how her employer was critical and crucial in helping her stay safe while reinventing her personal life. Today, Amy is back to share about her second reinvention in her professional life. She moved from the relative safety of a comfortable corporate job to the risky and often challenging life of a startup entrepreneur. Amy founded First30, an outplacement and onboarding company, and serves now as its CEO. She's also a professional speaker, the author of A Spark in the Dark, Illuminating Your Path to a Brilliant Career in a Reorg World, and her upcoming second book, Creating a Praise Culture, an employer's guide to a more positive, productive, and profitable workforce. Her new podcast, Your New Business Big Sister, launched in January 2025. Please welcome once again, Amy Davies to the podcast. Hi there.
Hello. Nice to see you again.
You too. Thank you for coming back and doing a second episode with us. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So first of all, I mentioned in the other episode that I love your first book. I have it right here. It was so helpful to me. I met you and was introduced to your book at a very pivotal point in my career. And I was in the process of looking for a way to reinvent myself. I was leaving my full-time job and searching for my what's next. And the whole idea behind your book is to help people who lose their jobs due to corporate reorganization, but obviously it applies to anyone like me who switches jobs or careers for any reason. So first of all, just share with us a little bit why you wrote this book in the first place. Did you lose your corporate job to reorganization?
Well, it started further back than that, but the answer to that question is yes, that happened a couple times. And the reason that it happened, by the way, thank you for the shout out of the book. I'm really glad that you could appreciate it at a time when maybe you did need it most. So thank you for sharing that with me and your audience. But I was explaining in the last episode that I started my career at Unilever's head office in the UK. And it was when they were going through their very first restructuring. And these are people who thought they were going to have the same career forever. And they were so shocked because they had never imagined a life outside of Unilever. And it was an amazing company. It was a great company to work for and a really nice environment to work in. And I watched all of the emotions. And I was that kind of person that people would talk to, right? And they tell me how they were really doing and not just the, front that people put up naturally in those sorts of situations. So I learned a lot through that experience. And then over the years, I worked for a telecommunications company who seemed to always be doing restructuring. So it was like every 6 months. And in one of the reorgs, very early on, I was the last person standing on my team, which was quite shocking. And then over the years, I was in, like I said, a cost center role, meaning I wasn't in sales or a role that's, or like in finance. Those are roles tied to the bottom line, and they're very visible to everyone. Like, what are you saving the company? What are you making the company? When you're in roles like now, the business I have supports mainly HR teams. And HR is in that same really difficult situation because it's not as easy to tie metrics to the work that you do. And I was doing employee research and consumer research, and it takes a long time for those insights to pay off if they do, right? So it looks to the business on paper like you're just draining the company's resources. So yes, I did get laid off due to restructuring a couple times. And through it all, I always wanted to write a book. And I didn't know what about. I knew I wanted to be about careers and managing your career, but I didn't have a hook. A book needs a hook. So then I realized, oh, what if I wrote it all about having a successful career, as I said, in a world where we're constantly losing and changing our jobs? And it's funny that I've now launched this podcast years later, Your New Business Big Sister, but I wanted to be the big sister to people like me who, when I was younger, starting out and helping them figure things out when you don't have a guide anymore, because companies, you're not seen as, I say to people, always treat every job as though it's temporary. It's not like like a contract and not a permanent position. So that's kind of how my journey to writing the book. It took years and years and years of thought. And then because I didn't have that hook, as I said, and then finally getting the time to sit down and do it. I was lucky to have that time. It was because I got restructured and I had a severance package. And so I was still being paid so I could sit and write the book. And that's exactly what I did.
And you shared so much of your personal life in the previous episode. Obviously, I want to encourage everyone to go back and listen to that episode. Personal trauma, stalking, some abuse. And it's so easy to sort of separate that was your personal reinvention and now this is your professional reinvention. But obviously our personal and professional lives are so intertwined. Were any of your career changes directly connected to what you were going through in your personal life?
They were, for sure, because I was finally in a situation where I could have, I realized what I was capable of as I mentioned before, I had support from my employer. I had so much support from my parents. Without that support, I would not have been able to, who knows what would have happened, because it happened. Like, that support was there for me. But I feel like looking back, I may not have been able, especially with the support with my kids and everything else that my parents provided, propel myself to that next level. But you do realize when you go through these things, Amy, and I'm sure that you've had this experience in your life too. I was just watching your TED Talk actually before we got on.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I loved it. And you talk about, there's no expiry date. And we all kind of come to these moments at different times in our lives where we feel like there is so much to learn, right? We are on a journey of learning. And the best thing I think someone can do for themselves to prepare for any kind of reinvention, especially a professional one, is to be resourceful. I learned how to write code a few months ago, Amy, because I wanted to do something and I couldn't get anyone else to do it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go and figure this out for myself. And there's tools like ChatGPT. Like, ChatGPT has so many capabilities that people might not even be aware of.
One of the things we talked about in the last episode was that you were forced to reinvent your personal life, and you shared that you almost felt more empowered then to reinvent your professional life because you had already done it in your personal life.
Yeah. And I knew how strong I was. And I knew that there's always things that are holding you back, especially financial things, right? Some people might want to start Reinvention as a side gig, a side hustle.
Uh-huh.
And that's okay too. That's kind of what I did. I was writing my book in the background a little bit, and then I finally was able to. And writing, by the way, you don't have to sit down and spend 3 months writing a book. You can write a book on the weekends. You can write a book, depending on what your life looks like. I don't want to make
Uh-huh.
assumptions about other people's lives, but you don't have to only be writing a book. That's, right now I'm writing a book. I'm launching a course. I'm running a business. I'm doing a podcast. I'm being a guest on podcasts like yours. I'm running a leadership workshop on Friday. Like, you can be doing all kinds of different things at one time, which is what I needed to do. I realized that in my corporate career, I was never going to have the breadth of opportunity, and I was never going to be able to realize all of the things that I could do well if I was stuck in one role. Even with a great company, now that I've been able to utilize so many of these skills, I am shocked that I have all of these skills. They're not all amazing. And sales was the hardest one for me, for sure. Still a challenge. Just being like understanding how to do that, go through that process, and be always kind of, oh, what is it? The ABCs? No, I'm not like that at all. But finding my groove in that space was tough, but I finally found it. And it's been so exciting. And I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to do all of the things that I've done since I've left the corporate world. But you're not going to make as much money. And that's something people have to get used to right away, anyway.
Right? So many pros and cons of being your own employer. It would have been easier to go get another corporate job at a different corporation. You'd have benefits, you'd have a steady paycheck. And you mentioned a little bit already some of the reasons that you didn't do that and you decided to go out on your own. But how scary was it to start your own company instead of just going to get a job?
Well, I was just very fortunate in that I didn't do it right away. So when we ended off our last episode, I was sort of kind of, everything had kind of fallen apart, and I was at the rebuild stage. I changed jobs because I wanted to keep making more money and I would look for
Mhm.
different jobs and different opportunities, more senior level positions. It's really hard sometimes to get promoted in your organization, depending also on your geographic location. And I'm not in the best geographic location to, Chicago, for instance, would have been a much better place. I mentioned working at Wrigley. There were opportunities there. I could not take them because of my situation. So you have to figure out when is the right time for you. And the right time for me was not right away. Spent many years still in the corporate world, building my foundation and learning from amazing professionals who I got the opportunity to work with, learning from some good professionals and learning some mistakes and understanding what worked and didn't. And then it was not until about 4 or 5 years after I left my marriage that I then broke out on my own and wrote the book and launched First30.
And one of the quotes in the book that really hit me was, "Your career is a huge part of your life. You should be fulfilled by it, not feel perpetually beaten or overwhelmed by it."
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think too often people stay in a job or a career, and there is a difference, which you point out in the book, because it's safe and they don't think they can do anything else. So, what do you say to those people?
Well, I say that some people can, and some people will find it a real challenge. I'm not one of those people who comes out and says everyone can do this if they just put their mind to it. That is not true, and that's not the reality. And I hate to be that person saying it, but I don't think I'm helping people by saying that you can do this. It is so hard, Amy. Even when you look successful, it is like every day there can be something that comes up. Something came up today that I had to deal with, and it wasn't easy, and it took a lot of work figuring it out, and took a lot of my time. An entrepreneur's currency is their time, a lot of patience and resourcefulness. You might be a person who has all of those things in spades. Go for it. You will still find it hard, though. And you don't even know what people mean when they say running a business is really tough until you start running a business and you're like, oh, that's what Amy meant. But part of what drove me out of the corporate world is, quite honestly, I just don't like being told what to do. And so It was the feeling that I was going to be under, like someone else was going to have a hold on me, and knowing what I knew about restructuring and the constant flux and turmoil, I'm like, I am no safer here than I am out there. So I've got to get out there and do this, because I'm always going to regret it if I don't try. And if you're one of those people that is like, I cannot look back on my life and think, oh, I should have tried, at least tried, try and fail, but I should have at least tried, then you might be the right person to do it. But if you're someone running, when I talk about this in my podcast too, a really bad reason to start a business is because you're running away from something. For me, there was a push and a pull. There has to be both. It can't be like, I talk to a lot of people who want to become coaches, career coaches, and people are asking me for my advice all the time. That's part of the reason I started the podcast. But I just say to them, like, do you really want to coach people, or do you just not want to have to go into an office every day, right?
An answer to a boss.
Right, exactly. So that's a tough one for people to figure out. But in the book, and in just in my podcast too, I talk about, you have to find something you're good at. And you can get better at certain things, but if you're not interested and you're not good at it, you're probably not going to be ever great at it. Something you're good at, something that you enjoy, and something that makes you money. And those three things have to meet. Like you can't,
Right.
like you can be an amazing musician and love it. Doesn't mean you're going to make money doing it, right? It's a hard industry. So that's kind of how I think about it and how I encourage people to think about it. For me, all of those things fit together in what I'm doing now. And I keep changing what I'm doing. You talked about, again, I'll go back to your TED talk. You talked about you can reinvent yourself multiple times. And I think that I started First30, and I'm sticking to a certain core, but I keep building and building and building and building because it's exciting to me. I want to help other people in my position start their business. I can't talk to everybody. So start a podcast and do it in the same way you're doing this now, right?
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I talk about in my TEDx talk when I'm sharing my story is that I was fortunate enough to be able to choose to leave my job. But there are so many people who lose their job, whether they're fired, downsized, corporate layoffs, reorganization, all of those things. And they've poured their heart and soul into this career. And now suddenly they're like, whoa, they were just blindsided. What kind of advice do you have for those people?
Well, I say in the book, and we say in the program that we run for First30, because First30, I should say, is an outplacement company. We do employee onboarding. We build onboarding programs as well, and a few other things, but primarily we started as an outplacement company. So we work with companies who are running layoffs. We help people recover from the job loss and get back to work. And the reason that I mention that is because both in the book and in the program, I say to people, always be reorg ready. Like, know the risk, know that you could lose your job tomorrow. It's like living in a rental property. That house is not yours. Someone could come in at any time and say, hey, I'm putting this property on the market. You have to move. And it's the exact same thing with the job. And I think employers are very wise, first of all, to treat employees really well. And there's all a million things that you can do. That's my next book. But an employee is wise to keep the emotional disconnect from the company. Do your job really well. Like, I always really put my heart and soul into it, into the work, but I knew that the company did not belong to me, and they could make a decision that would impact my fate any day. So for people who are in that situation right now, keep relevant. Stay on social media platforms like LinkedIn. Yes, some people hate them and they tell me how much they hate them. The worst thing you can do is go off of them, because you're going to be in a situation where suddenly you need something, whether it's clients or whether it's a job, and you have to build from the ground up your old network. You have to start reaching out to them. You could have stayed relevant on there the whole time by going on once or twice a week. Put it in your calendar, half an hour here, half an hour there, and you're good. People will remember who you are. The other thing is, if you're going to look for another job, always have your resume ready to go. And if you've come to a point in your career where you are more senior, do not take the resume that you had when your career started and build up from there. Write a whole new resume. I know people hate when I say that, but it's really important. So stay connected, stay relevant on social media, and make sure that you have your resume and be open to opportunities and possibilities. Talk to people, find out what's going on in the world, and keep your learning up. Like people who are, I'm sure people hear this a lot and it's annoying, but if you do not know how to use AI, you are going to be at risk. That is, they say that it's not AI replacing jobs. What will happen is people who don't know AI are going to be replaced by people who do know how to use it effectively.
Right. And I think, I come from the TV news broadcasting world. And so have a plan B was something I was told from the very beginning, because a new boss can come in, you lose your job, it's so out of your hands. I can relate to so much of what you said. But also being a woman working in TV news, there's not a lot of 50 and 60-year-old women that are anchoring the evening news or working as a chief meteorologist. So I sort of knew in the back of my mind when I chose this career that I needed to have a plan B. And I think there are other careers maybe that it's not front of mind for people. And so you're saying, hey, this needs to be front of mind no matter what your career is.
Right, exactly. And if and Amy, frankly, the majority of people are not going to listen to my advice on this topic. And I think it's to their own detriment, because I know that it works. Like, I know you're a glowing example of that it works. And you and I, by the way, when we met, we had a really, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember it so clearly. We had just a conversation about Facebook and LinkedIn and how the platforms function. And you actually were like, we learn a lot of new things from each other just in general.
Mhm.
But like, we had a really good conversation and we were both open to new ways to use those platforms. So I think that helps us both, because we'll have the conversation and we're like, you're smart, I'm going to listen to you, and that's be open to new information.
When you first decided to set out on your own and start your own business, and you have roadblocks, you have challenges, were there times that you felt like giving up?
Yes. Yes. I had, like, it's ups and downs, and for sure there are times where you can't figure something out, or the one thing that I've tried to do is work with other people I really like. I have because one of the things when you're down, you need to have a support system. Like, some people call it your personal board of directors. My friend Hamesh guy, he was amazing for me. Like, we haven't spoken in like a year now, but at the time he was the person I would call. And my husband would say, is it a day that you need to give Hamesh a call? And I would call him. And now I work with an amazing woman named Kamara Toffolo, who helps me run the business. And so she really like helps me and lifts me up. And I hope that I do the same for her. Another friend, Sherry Angle, she's been so supportive. Like, I could list people all day. I won't, but when you are feeling down, you need these people to remind you of who you are, why you started this business in the first place, and that this is a bad moment. It's not a bad business.
Having that tribe around you, or your posse, or
Yes.
your group of friends
Yes.
that not only helps keep you moving forward and encourages you, but also sometimes tough love is important too, right?
Yes. And I'll give a shout out to Sherry here. She's a really, really smart person, and she has she, in a very kind way, by the way, she has sort of said, hey, like, is this gonna help you or hinder things? Like, and I'm so glad that she kind of brought my attention to some things that I was like ready to go on. And she's like, wait a second, what are you trying to achieve? What is the bigger picture here? And she saved me from doing some things that wouldn't have been productive for my business. When you run a business, you get really excited about the things you're good at, and that can take you down a rabbit hole. So you need
Mhm.
people to say, hey, are you doing that because you're good at it, or are you doing that because it's going to help your business? And sometimes it's your comfort zone. Like, I'm avoiding the sales side of the business, or I'm avoiding doing my bookkeeping.
Well, you brought up sales, so that's sort of directly linked to money. And money, of course, that's always the key to everything, right? A lot of people feel like they can't start a business because it's too expensive. So, what advice do you have surrounding finances?
The best advice I can give is make sure that you have a runway, and that runway is longer than you think it needs to be. So if you can support yourself for this is like when I said it on the podcast, my friend who was co-hosting with me said that's a big sister number, 18 months to 2 years. Like, can you support yourself for that long? Do you have an investment that you could sell, like something? Maybe you have, if you're fortunate enough to have a second property, or you have a rental property and people are living in that, or you have just done a really good job of saving. But you have to have a plan to make zero income for a period of time. And that period of time is longer than you think it's going to be.
One of the things that we did when I was looking to leave my job, I didn't just quit my job on a whim. It was a
Yeah.
couple of years of making the decision. But one of the things that we did that was practical was we sat down with our budget, figured about, what we could cut out. And my paycheck was, I got paid every 2 weeks. And when you get paid every 2 weeks, that means there's a couple of times where you get 3 checks in 1 month. We took
Yeah.
that third check and put the entire thing into savings.
That is such a smart plan. And I think the biggest mistake people make is they take this like, I need it now. It's the whole I need it now.
Mhm.
You're That is not how businesses work. And as people say all the time, if it was easy, everyone would do it. It's clearly not that easy, because if you watch people on social media, you see a lot of people try and they don't succeed. They're not going and telling you about that, but look at their history, their professional history. You see there's this one little blip where they started something, and good for them for trying. Good for them. So I'm not trying to shame anybody. But people just like, they're like, I want to leave my job and I want a new life and I just want it all right now. You and I were both planful about how we approach this, and that has paid
Mhm.
off for us both.
Sometimes people leave a career for whatever reason, right? They feel restless, they want more, they don't want to be micromanaged. We've talked a lot about them already in this podcast. They want to reinvent their career for whatever reason. But do you think it's possible to reinvent yourself while staying at your current job? Do you think you have to leave a job behind in order to find a brand new you?
Well, I started doing that in a way, and I mean, I didn't drop the ball on my current job. Like, and I'm not trying to say I'm perfect or anything, but like, I was able to do it because I knew really well how to do my job. It really depends on the type of job you have and the kind of person you are. If you know that you're going to be working all day and all night at your current job, I just don't know where you'll find the bandwidth. Maybe you have more energy than I do. We're all so different, right? Like, we need different amounts of sleep every night. It's a myth that we all need the same amount of sleep, like 8 hours. I need 8 hours.
I
That's
need
for
9.
sure. Yeah. But again, some of us just have more energy than others. So I think it's a real reflection point. Like, who are you and what can you handle? Do you have kids? That's going to be a big thing too. So the answer is yes for some. Those that can do it, I think it's amazing. Go for it, try it, and keep the security of your job. But there's going to be those people who can't, and I was one of them that can't do it because they have so many demands on them in their personal life, and also just because they may not have the energy to do it all, and that's okay too. So I guess you just have to figure out what kind of person you are. There's so many articles that are just like, you can do this and da da da, like these clickbaits. I don't think there's a clickbait for this. I think you have to evaluate yourself and the business you want to start and the business you're in on its own terms, which is like a really boring answer, but I think it's accurate.
Absolutely. You've given so much great advice throughout the last half hour. Obviously, I'm excited about your podcast, your New Business Big Sister. Where can people find your podcast?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube page. It's New Biz Big Sis, pretty much everywhere you can find me, but always the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. And if they want to learn more about my business, just for context of what I started and how it operates, it's first30, the number 30, ready.com. First30 ready. And you can kind of see what I've created from, listening to this conversation.
Awesome. Amy Davies, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a guest on 2 of my podcasts and sharing your story. I just know that your personal and professional reinvention stories are going to help so many others.
Thank you.
So, what about you? Were you inspired by Amy's story? The era of lifelong jobs is over. It's really no longer the norm to dedicate your entire career to just one employer. Sometimes we choose to leave, but sometimes we're forced to leave. And regardless of the reason, if you end up in a new job or with a new career, you can find fulfillment. Your career is your responsibility. Don't spend your entire life in a job that makes you miserable, but also don't just quit on a whim. Changing jobs or starting a business takes time, a lot of hard work, and sometimes a lot of money. So remember, everyone defines success differently. You have to figure out your own definition and focus on that. So whether you want to reinvent yourself or you have to reinvent yourself, remember, reinvention is possible. Go make it happen for you today.